TitleMatchNetwork.com.
Vince has a good memory, and he remembers things well. And Mike Rotunda and I really had a good run there, with the U.S. Express. We were in Baltimore, Maryland one night, and we'd been on the road. We had, not being home, not a day off for 96 days straight. And Rotunda he'd had it. Rotunda, he snapped, he flipped. Here we were, driving downtown Baltimore. We were going to a restaurant to eat, and he's in the passenger seat, and he's wigged. So I said, "What are you doing?" He opens the door and he gets out and just leaves. So now here I am driving around downtown Baltimore. I'm trying to find Rotunda. Man, where'd he go? And I can't leave him, his best friend and that. So I get a phone call. I finally went back to the hotel, and I get a phone call, and it was my sister. My sister said to me, "Mike just wanted me to tell you that he wants to know that if you'll send his bags home, because he went to the airport. He didn't have enough money with him to pay cab fare, because his money was in his bags at the hotel. But he gave his watch to a cab, to a taxi driver to take him to the airport. And of course, man, we had stacks of airplane tickets, from Vince. It was in the early days before, e-tickets and stuff. So we had thousands of dollars worth of plane tickets. We had those tickets you could use to go anywhere on the planet, left over, whether we, instead of flying somewhere, we decided to drive the car just to do something different. So Mike used those tickets, to go home. Well, the next night we were in Boston, and by we, I mean, Vince's company. So I remember that the guy that took the brunt of me really going off, because there I was, Rotunda had left, flipped out and gone home. And I was there in Boston. George Scott was there at the building. And I was ranting and raving like a lunatic. I said, "Man, you've run Rotunda off. And every 2 weeks when we're at TV, you do TV for 2 straight days, and you're there from dawn till after midnight when we were doing those TVs for Vince. We did a lot of them in Poughkeepsie, New York, and man, they were a battle. It was a marathon, and you were on your feet the whole time, and man, it was hard work, because you're traveling every day. Like I said, we were 96 days straight. So I flipped out. I went off. Jay Strongbow was there. George Scott was there. I said, "I'm quitting. I'm leaving. You never see me again. You've done this to us. We've begged for days off. We've asked for, I wanted my girlfriend to come and see me, and Mike wanted my sister to come and see us, but they had us flying so many places, it was impossible. It was just, it would be too much for them." So
there was a big rumor going around that it had something to do with the belts with Beefcake and Valentine, but obviously not, because we didn't.
No.
Just you guys were burned out.
No. Now there's nothing to that, but I'll tell you, that was Valentine was mad about it, because we were supposed to work with them,
right,
and put the belts on them,
right.
And I believe that we did. We worked with them, and we shot the angle
I think it was
to where
Johnny V put the cigar in your eye.
The cigar out, in my eye. So I was supposed to work with an eye patch on, and that was about the same time. So there we were on the road traveling, and you didn't go to one place and you didn't work in Vancouver, and then, Calgary, and then say Seattle, like have a little loop. Vince had us going from, we'd be in Seattle, and then the next night, Miami, and then Madison Square Garden the next night, and then San Francisco or LA. It was crazy, man. His transportation bills had to be, outrageous. So, it's done a little bit differently now. You kind of try to, you work an area, and then you move on to another. And that was just so tough on you. We lived out Rotunda and I had the same bags. We had 2 Halliburton. buildings, this size. And that's what for 96 days, and trying to go into the airport. Here's how we lived our life. You'd get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, you get on a plane, you fly, you're wearing a pair of jeans that you've been wearing for 5 days because you haven't had time to go to a laundromat or send anything out because you're not in a city long enough to do it. I mean, we would be at the building, we'd wash out, our clothes and try to leave them and hang and dry for a while. Or some of the buildings, we found out that they had washers and dryers, like those great
right.
So, man, as soon as we got in the building, we'd go throw our stuff in there and wash our clothes. But anyway, like the thing with Beefcake and Valentine, it was nothing personal. And like you say, it was, I think that Greg, kind of took it personal because what it did is that when I left Boston on that night, I think People's Express was still flying, so how long ago that was. But they had a 1 a.m. flight out to St. Petersburg, Florida, which is, just right across the bay from Tampa. Right. And I went and I got on a plane and I went home. I pulled my phone lines out of the wall. I flipped just like Rotundo did. I mean, we were supposed to work a program with them, and usually with Vince, the way he set something up, you worked around all over the United States, for 6 months and sometimes a year. Well, when I stepped out and went home, like I said, I pulled the phones out of the wall. The cords out of the wall and just I didn't want to see anybody. I didn't want to talk to anybody. And with Vince, he probably would have worked with me if I'd have spoken to him. But I was just as flipped as Rotundo was. But what Rotundo did is with Rotundo, I came home from Boston the night after he left. I was home, crazy, staring at the ceiling, not sleeping, wondering, man, what am I going to do? Am I just going to, just hang out for a while? Because, I'd make more money than I ever imagined, in my life that I was making. So, here's the first thing I did when I got back. I went out and bought a new Porsche. Me, here I was, I thought, okay, I got to do something. So I went and bought a new Porsche. And I think it was 2 days after I went home, I ended up calling my sister. And I said, let me talk to Mike. And she said, well, Mike's not here. I said, what do you mean Mike's not here? I said, I left and he left.
Right.
We can figure out something to where, we can go to Japan or something because they had been requesting us in Japan a lot. And she said, no, he went back to work. I said, oh, man. Well, I'd said enough things to George Scott and to Jay Strongbow and to Pat Patterson, that to where, when I let somebody know something, I'll let go. And that's what I did. And I had made such a big mistake, that I had to, it wasn't really one that I could live down. I just had to live with the mistake I made. Rotundo flipped, so I flipped, but he came to his senses and I didn't. So I just, I completely never called back. And I would see some of the boys down in Florida and they'd say, man, they're trying to find you. Well, instead, what Vince did is, I guess he had Rotundo work as a single for a while. But then what he did is he figured he'd say, okay, I'll just, the hell with it. I'll clone Barry Windham. So he got Danny Spivey. And Spivey's, is a little bit bigger than I am, and he's so it's just like, Vince just carried on and there was Spivey in that position.
Did you have any heat with Dan for doing that or?
No. You know what? I didn't care because, I just, like I said, it wasn't a life-changing error that I made, but it was something. It was one of those decisions that I made. Like I said, Vince has a very good memory,
right,
and he remembers those things. Because I'm sure we'll get to it later, but I had a conversation with him about it. But anyway, Spivey stepped in, and it just didn't make the angle with
Beefcake and Mel.
Yeah, I was going to call him Dizzy Hogan because he worked as that before, but I still call him Diz now, and he gets hot at me.
TitleMatchNetwork.com